He humiliated his wife publicly. She came back with something that silenced him. The laughter stopped too suddenly. One moment the room was warm and noisy, and the next it felt cold, like someone had opened a window in winter. All eyes turned to Mira. She stood beside her husband Daniel in the middle of the hotel banquet hall. Crystal lights hung above them. His company logo glowed on a giant screen behind the stage. This was supposed to be a celebration dinner for his promotion. It was supposed to be safe. Daniel lifted his glass and smiled. It was the smile people trusted, the confident smile that filled magazines and business posts online. "I want to thank everyone," he said. "My parents, my partners, and of course," he paused and looked at Mira. "My wife." A few people clapped softly. Daniel chuckled. "Mira has supported me in her own way. At home, quietly, very quietly." Some guests laughed. He kept going. "She always says she doesn't understand business. And honestly, it shows." Mira felt her chest tighten. She tried to help once Daniel continued. Gave advice. "I told her, leave these things to people who know what they're doing." He shook his head like it was a joke. "Some people are just better suited to simpler roles." Laughter spread through the room, louder this time. Mira's face burned. She looked at the tables, at co-workers, at wives who avoided her eyes, at men who smirked into their drinks. Daniel leaned closer to the microphone. "Let's be honest. Without me, Mira would be nothing more than a background figure, a shadow." The word hit her harder than the laughter. Was this the man she married? Was this the same man who once held her hand and promised respect? She tried to speak. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her throat felt closed. Daniel raised his glass again. "To success, and to knowing your place." Applause followed. Strong, confident, final. Mira stood there frozen. The room felt too big, too bright. Her ears rang. She heard someone whisper her name, then another soft laugh. A phone camera flashed. She took one step back, then another. Daniel didn't notice. Or maybe he did and didn't care. Mira turned and walked off the stage. Her heels felt unstable. Each step felt heavier than the last. She reached the hallway and leaned against the wall. Her hands shook. In the bathroom, she locked herself into a stall. She pressed her fist against her mouth to stop the sound rising in her chest. Tears fell silently onto her dress. How do you survive when the person who promised to protect you is the one who breaks you? How do you stand again after being crushed in front of everyone? She waited until the noise in the hall faded. When she finally looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were empty, her shoulders slumped. That night, Daniel did not come home with her. Mira sat alone in the dark living room, still wearing the same dress. Her phone stayed silent. The house felt too large for one person. She realized something then, not with anger, not with rage, with quiet clarity. She had been erased in public, and no one had stopped it. Mira curled into herself on the couch, hugging her knees, feeling smaller than she ever had before. The woman Daniel humiliated on that stage no longer felt like someone worth seeing. And in that silence, something inside her finally broke. Morning came like it always did, too bright and too normal. Mira woke up on the couch with her neck stiff and her eyes swollen. For a second, she forgot why she was there. Then her phone lit up with a notification and everything rushed back. A short video clip. Daniel on stage, his smile, his voice. The word shadow. Someone had posted it. She didn't even need to open it. She could already hear the laughter in her head. Mira sat up slowly. Her dress from last night clung to her like a reminder she couldn't peel off. She went to the bathroom and stared at her face again. Makeup smeared, a faint line where tears had dried. Her lips looked pale. She turned on the faucet and washed her hands, then her face, then her arms, like she could wash off the shame. But it stayed. It wasn't dirt. It was something deeper. In the kitchen, the air smelled stale. She made coffee out of habit. The machine gurgled and clicked. The sound felt too loud in the quiet house. Daniel still hadn't come home. She checked his location on her phone and stopped herself. She didn't want to know. Not today. Her fingers hovered over his contact. She didn't call. Instead, she sat at the table, holding the warm mug with both hands like it was the only thing keeping her steady. Then the messages started. A co-worker's wife, someone Mira barely knew, eh? Are you okay? Last night was awkward, another men joke. Don't take it so seriously. He didn't mean it. Her mother-in-law, Daniel, told me you were emotional again. Please don't embarrass him. He works hard. Mira stared at those words until they blurred. The worst part was not that they defended him. It was that they spoke to her like she was a problem that needed managing. Her own phone buzzed again. A message from her cousin Lonnie. I saw it. I'm coming over. Mira didn't reply right away. She didn't want anyone to see her like this. She didn't want pity. She didn't want advice. She wanted to disappear. But an hour later, the doorbell rang. Mira opened the door just a crack. Lonnie stood there holding a paper bag. Don't tell me to go away, Lanny said quickly. I'll sit on the floor if you want. I'll just be here. Mira's throat tightened. She stepped aside. Lonnie walked in and placed the bag on the table. I brought soup, she said, and bread. You didn't eat last night, did you? Mira lowered her eyes. Lonnie's face hardened. I watched the video. Twice. Because I couldn't believe it. Mira flinched at the word video. Lonnie softened again and reached out slowly, like she was approaching a frightened animal. Mira, look at me. Mira tried, but her eyes filled again. What he did was cruel, Lonnie said. Not a joke. Cruel. Mira shook her head weakly. It's fine. No, Lanny said sharper. Stop saying that. You always say that. You always make it small so you can survive it. Mira swallowed. Her voice came out thin. Maybe I embarrassed him first. Maybe I don't. Lanny interrupted. Don't do that. Don't carry his sin like it's your bag. Mira's hands trembled. She pressed them together to stop the shaking. Lonnie sat down across from her. Did he apologize? Mira let out a short, bitter laugh that sounded wrong in her mouth. He didn't even come home. Lanny stared. Still, Mira nodded. For a long moment, Lanny said nothing. Then she leaned forward. Do you want me to call him? No. Mira's answer came too fast, too desperate. Please don't. Why not? Lanny asked. Because if Daniel answered, he might laugh again. Because if he ignored the call, it would prove what Mira already felt. Because if he came home angry, it would be worse. Mira couldn't explain. She only whispered, I'm tired. Lanny's eyes filled too, but she held it back. Okay, I won't call him, but I'm not leaving you alone with this. Mira looked away. After Lanny left later that afternoon, the house felt quiet again. Mira moved through it like a ghost. She showered, put the dress in the laundry basket, put on sweatpants, tied her hair back. It was like she was rebuilding her body from pieces. She checked social media once, just once, and regretted it immediately. Comments under the clip, laughing emojis, people defending Daniel, calling him honest and alpha. A few women wrote, she looks so pathetic. Someone even wrote, he's right. She's just decoration. Mira's hands went cold. She deleted the app from her phone. She turned the phone off. She sat on the bedroom floor with her back against the bed and stared at the wall until the light outside faded. That evening, Daniel finally came home. She heard the key, the door, his shoes on the floor. He walked into the bedroom like nothing happened. His suit jacket was gone, his tie loose. He smelled like whiskey and confidence. Mira, he said like her name was a task. Why aren't you answering your phone? Mira didn't move. Daniel sighed. You made it a bigger deal than it needed to be. People are messaging me asking if you're okay. Do you know how that looks? Mira lifted her eyes slowly. Daniel rubbed his forehead like he was the one suffering. It was a dinner. It was a speech. I was joking. Mira's voice came out quiet. You called me nothing, Daniel scoffed. I said you're quiet. That's not a crime. You said I'm a shadow, she whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened. It was a metaphor. Mira stared at him. She had no strength to argue, no energy to beg. Daniel looked at her and seemed annoyed by her silence. You know what, I'm not doing this right now. He turned away. I have meetings tomorrow. Try to act normal. He walked out of the room, leaving Mira on the floor like she belonged there. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. She heard him snoring in the other room. The sound made her stomach twist. In the early hours, she got up, opened the closet, and pulled out a small suitcase. She stared at it for a long time. Then she pushed it back. Not yet. The next days were worse, not better. Her mother-in-law called. Daniel said you were being dramatic. Mira held the phone with shaking fingers. He humiliated me. You should be grateful, her mother-in-law replied. A strong man needs respect. If you don't know your place, he will remind you. Mira's mouth went dry. That's not marriage. Her mother-in-law laughed once cold. Marriage is survival, and you are surviving because of him. When the call ended, Mira stared at the wall again. Her chest hurt in a dull, steady way. Even people she thought were friends changed. A neighbor who used to chat with her in the elevator now nodded quickly and looked away. A woman at the grocery store, someone Mira knew from Daniel's work events, smiled politely and said, Oh, Mira, tough night, huh? Mira's cheeks burned as if she was still standing under those banquet lights. She stopped going out. She stayed inside and did small tasks. Wash dishes, fold towels, wipe counters, anything that kept her hands moving and her thoughts quieter. But the thoughts always returned. She remembered the early days with Daniel, the small apartment, the cheap ramen dinners, the way he used to say, you're the only person who believes in me. And she had believed, fully, fiercely. Now he stood tall in a world she helped him build, and he acted like she was dust at his feet. One afternoon, Mira went into the hallway closet to find a folder. It was where she kept old documents. She didn't know what she was looking for. Maybe proof that her life was real. Maybe something solid. She found the marriage certificate first. The ink looked faded. The paper smelled like time. Under it was an old envelope addressed to her, not Daniel. Her name only. From a law office. Dated years ago. Her heart skipped. She didn't remember opening it. Her hands hovered over the seal. Her mind screamed, not now. Don't stir more pain. But something inside her, small, tired, and stubborn, didn't want to be a shadow anymore. She opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, legal language, names, numbers, a reference to a trust, a reference to an inheritance claim that had been pending confirmation. Mira's breath caught. Why had she never seen this before? She flipped to the end and saw the name of the attorney, a contact number, a signature. She read it again slower. A cold, clear feeling moved through her body. Not happiness, not excitement, recognition. There had been things Daniel didn't know, things she herself had avoided because she didn't want trouble, because she didn't want to look greedy, because she wanted love more than power. But love had not protected her. That evening, Daniel left for another dinner without asking if she wanted to come. Mira watched his car disappear through the window. Then she went back to the kitchen table, turned on her phone again, and typed the number from the letter into her contacts. She saved it under one word, truth. She stared at that name on the screen for a long time. Her finger hovered over call. Outside, the sky darkened. The house felt silent, but Mira didn't feel empty in the same way. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She only whispered very softly to herself, I'm done being quiet. And in that moment, Mira made a decision without telling anyone. She would not fight with screams. She would not beg for respect. She would leave, and she would rebuild. She placed the letter back in the envelope, put it in her bag, and looked around the house like she was seeing it for the last time. Then she began to pack slowly, carefully choosing only what mattered. When Daniel came home late that night, the closet door was slightly open, and Mira's side was already half empty. Daniel liked mornings again. He stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his cufflinks, watching his own reflection with approval. His jaw looked sharp. His suit fit perfectly. The man in the glass looked like someone people listened to. Mira was gone. Not completely, but enough. Her silence had settled into the house like a new rule. No questions, no waiting dinner, no soft reminders about meetings or birthdays. At first, Daniel noticed it. Then he enjoyed it. She's finally calming down, he told himself as he poured coffee. She needed time to process. At the office, the video still followed him, but not in the way Mira experienced it. People laughed when they brought it up. Bold speech, one colleague said in the elevator. Honest, another nodded. My wife would have cried, a third joked. You're lucky yours is quiet. Daniel smiled. She knows I didn't mean harm. That was the version he repeated, to everyone, so often that it became solid in his mind. During meetings, he spoke louder than usual, confident, untouchable. He liked seeing heads nod. He liked being the center again. When someone asked, is your wife okay, he waved it off. She's sensitive, he said. She'll be fine. At lunch, he scrolled through his phone. Messages praising his leadership, an invitation to speak at an industry event, another to join a private investment group. Everything was moving forward. He didn't message Mira. She didn't message him either. That silence should have bothered him. It didn't. At night, he slept deeply. No guilt. No second thoughts. When he thought of the banquet, he remembered laughter, not her face. In his mind, Mira had always been fragile, emotional, too careful. He had lifted her life. He had given her stability, a name, a place in his world. And now she was upset because he told the truth. Daniel shook his head. Women, he muttered once alone in the car. They make storms out of air. His mother called one evening. She hasn't contacted me, she said. She needs space, Daniel replied. Good, his mother said. Let her reflect. Daniel smiled as he ended the call. At work, he noticed something else. Mira's absence had become convenient. No more questions about contracts he brought home. No quiet concern when he stayed out late. No eyes watching him count receipts. He told himself that meant peace. One afternoon during a board meeting, someone mentioned an upcoming charity gala, a formal event. Press invited. Bring your wives, the organizer said casually. Daniel paused for half a second, then nodded. Of course. That night he opened the closet and noticed Mira's clothes missing. Not all of them, but enough to leave gaps. He frowned, annoyed. He sent her a message. Are you staying somewhere else? No reply. He waited an hour, then sent another. We need to talk like adults. Still nothing. Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't like being ignored. He liked control, order. He called her. It rang, then went to voicemail. Daniel exhaled sharply. Unbelievable. He didn't try again. Instead, he poured a drink and sat on the couch. He told himself she was being dramatic, that she would come back once she cooled down. She always did. Days passed. Daniel's reputation continued to rise. He posted photos from events, smiled next to powerful people. He looked like a man with nothing to lose. At dinner with investors, someone joked, "Careful what you say on stage. Your wife might disappear." Daniel laughed louder than necessary. She's not going anywhere. He believed that. What he didn't see were the small things shifting around him. A document request that took longer than usual. A call from legal that felt oddly formal. An old acquaintance asking questions about his marriage with too much interest. One afternoon, his assistant knocked on his office door. There's an email from a law firm, she said. They're requesting confirmation of marital assets. Daniel frowned. Why? They said it's related to an independent review. Daniel waved his hand. Forward it to legal. Probably routine. But something about the tone stuck with him. That evening he went home early. The house felt too quiet. Mira's favorite mug was gone. So was her jacket. Her books. He opened a drawer in the study. Her files were missing too. Daniel felt a flicker of irritation. She's being petty, he said aloud. He checked their shared accounts. Everything looked normal. Nothing missing. That calmed him. She couldn't do anything without him. He handled the finances, the connections, the lawyers. He had built this life. Mira had watched from the side. That was the truth. And truth didn't change just because someone was hurt. Daniel sat down and opened his laptop. He searched his name. Articles, praise, panels. Then without knowing why he searched hers. Mira Lawson. Very little came up. A few old academic mentions. A registration document from years ago. Nothing important. He smirked. Exactly. He closed the laptop. Across the city, Mira was invisible to him, and he believed that invisibility meant powerlessness. He did not know she was sitting in a small rented room, reading documents line by line. He did not know she had met with an attorney. He did not know that some of the papers he had ignored years ago carried his name in a way that could not be erased. Daniel slept that night convinced of one thing he had won, and the woman he humiliated had simply faded away. He had no idea how wrong he was. The room Mira rented was small and quiet. One window, a narrow bed, a desk that wobbled if she leaned too hard on it. It smelled faintly of old wood and detergent. She liked it. No one here knew her as Daniel's wife. No one looked at her with pity or judgment. The landlord only asked for rent and kept his distance. The neighbors nodded politely and minded their own lives. For the first time in years, Mira could breathe without asking permission. Her days became simple. She woke early, made tea, sat at the desk with a notebook and a growing stack of papers. The envelope from the closet never left her bag. The first call she made was the hardest. Her finger hovered over the number marked Truth for almost a full minute before she pressed it. Law Office of Helen Moore. A calm voice answered. Mira swallowed. My name is Mira Lawson. I received a letter from your office years ago about an inheritance. I believe it was never resolved. There was a pause. Keyboard clicks. Yes, the woman said slowly. I see the file. We've been waiting to hear from you. Waiting. Those words stayed with Mira after the call ended. The next week was filled with meetings that drained her more than she expected. Helen Moore was older than Mira imagined. Sharp eyes. No wasted words. You didn't respond because you were married, Helen said, flipping through documents. And because your husband became involved. Mira frowned. Involved how Helen slid a paper across the table. He requested delays, asked for reviews, claimed joint representation. Mira's stomach dropped. I never agreed to that. Helen met her gaze. That's why this matters. The inheritance came from Mira's late father's side, a man she barely remembered, estranged, quiet, complicated. He had owned a small but valuable stake in a private company that later merged into something much larger. Your claim was valid, Helen said. It still is. Mira stared at the numbers. They didn't feel real. They felt dangerous. Why now, Mira asked. Why didn't anyone push this before Helen closed the folder? Because you didn't push, and because someone benefited from your silence. Mira felt heat rise in her chest. Not rage. Something colder. Daniel had known. Maybe not everything, but enough. She left the office shaking not with excitement, but with fear. This wasn't a lottery win. This was a door opening to a room she had avoided all her life. That night she lay awake in the narrow bed staring at the ceiling. Her thoughts raced. What if she was wrong? What if Daniel crushed this too? What if standing up only hurt more? In the dark, she whispered, "I'm scared." No one answered, and that was okay. The next morning, she got up anyway. She began to rebuild herself piece by piece, not into someone new, but into someone she had buried. She updated her resume. Not the polite version she once sent out quietly, the honest one. Her education, her certifications, the projects she had abandoned to support Daniel. She attended free workshops, sat in the back at first, listened, took notes. She applied for a short consulting contract under her maiden name. When the acceptance email came, she cried quietly into her sleeve. Not because of the money, because someone saw value in her without knowing who she was married to. Mira learned to be alone in public again. She ate at small cafes with a book, walked through parks with headphones on, sat on benches, and watched people live their lives without noticing her. It was lonely, but it was clean. Sometimes doubt crept in. She would hear Daniel's voice in her head. "You're not built for this." She would freeze at the thought of facing him again. She would wake from dreams where she stood on that stage laughing with everyone else because crying felt worse. On those days, she almost quit. But then she would open the folder. Helen had given her copies of everything. Legal filings, emails, delays, signatures. Daniel's name appeared more often than it should have. One afternoon, Mira sat in the law office again, hands folded tightly. "Be honest with me," she said. "Do I actually have power here?" Helen leaned back. "You have facts, and facts are power when they're clean." "Will this destroy him?" Mira asked quietly. Helen studied her. "It will expose him. What happens after depends on how he stands when the light hits." Mira nodded slowly. She didn't want revenge. She wanted truth. She wanted her dignity back. Weeks passed. Her contract ended and turned into another. She opened a new bank account, one under her name only. The balance was modest, but it was hers. She stopped jumping when her phone rang. She started sleeping through the night. One evening, as she organized papers at her desk, Mira realized something that startled her. She wasn't angry all the time anymore. She was focused. The final meeting with Helen came on a rainy afternoon. "This is the decisive point," Helen said, sliding one last document across the desk. "Once you authorize this, there's no quiet way back." Mira read it carefully. Her hands were steady. "And Daniel?" she asked. "He will be notified," Helen replied. "Formally. Publicly if this proceeds." Mira closed her eyes for a second. She thought of the banquet hall, the lights, the laughter, the word shadow. She signed. When she stood up to leave, Helen stopped her. "One more thing," she said. "There's an additional file that came to light during the review." She handed Mira a sealed envelope. "You may want this later, not now." Mira took it. The weight of it felt different, heavier. "What is it?" Mira asked. Helen's voice was calm. "Evidence of intent." Mira slipped the envelope into her bag without opening it. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Mira walked slowly, feeling the ground beneath her feet. She wasn't powerful yet. She wasn't free of fear, but she was no longer invisible. And for the first time since that night on the stage, Mira allowed herself a small, quiet thought. "He doesn't know what I'm holding." She didn't smile. She simply kept walking forward. Daniel noticed her name before he noticed her face. "Mira Lawson," the assistant said, standing in the doorway of the conference room. "She's here." Daniel frowned. "For what she said, you'd understand." He didn't. Not yet. When Mira stepped into the room, the air changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough that people stopped shuffling papers. She wore a simple navy dress. No jewelry except a thin watch. Her hair was neatly tied back. Her posture was straight. She didn't look angry. That unsettled him more than anger would have. "Mira," Daniel said, standing halfway. "This isn't the place." "It is," she replied calmly. "I'll be brief." The board members exchanged looks. One of them gestured. "Please, sit." Mira didn't sit. She stood at the end of the table, hands relaxed at her sides. Daniel cleared his throat. "We're in the middle of, I know," she said. "That's why I'm here." Her voice was steady, the same voice that once whispered reminders and apologies, but something in it had changed. "I've authorized a legal review," Mira continued. "You should have received notice." Daniel's eyes flicked to his phone on the table. He hadn't checked it yet. "Whatever this is," he said, forcing a smile, "we can discuss it privately." Mira looked at him then, directly. No fear, no softness. "You already chose public," she said. Silence fell. One of the board members shifted uncomfortably. "Is there a conflict we should be aware of?" "Yes," Mira said. "There is." Daniel laughed once. "This is unnecessary." Mira reached into her bag and placed a folder on the table. She did not open it. "I'm not here to argue," she said. "I'm here to inform." She turned slightly, addressing the room. "My name is Mira Lawson. I am Daniel Lawson's legal spouse. I am also the sole beneficiary of an unresolved inheritance currently under review." Daniel's smile tightened. Mira continued. "That review includes delays, communications, and decisions made without my consent." A low murmur moved through the room. Daniel stood fully now. "This is ridiculous. You're emotional." Mira tilted her head slightly. "No, I'm prepared." She turned back to him. "You will receive full documentation today." Daniel's voice rose. "You're trying to embarrass me." Mira's gaze didn't waver. "I'm correcting the record." The board chair cleared his throat. "Mr. Lawson, we will need to pause this meeting." Daniel looked around, disbelief flashing across his face. He had never been paused before. Mira gathered her bag. "That's all." She walked out without another word. In the hallway, she exhaled slowly. Her hands shook just a little, but she didn't stop walking. Outside the building, Daniel followed her. "What are you doing?" he hissed. "Do you know what this could cost me?" Mira stopped and turned. "You cost yourself," she said quietly. "This is about money, isn't it?" Daniel snapped. "You want leverage." Mira shook her head. "This is about truth." Daniel scoffed. "You don't have anything." Mira met his eyes. "You know that's not true." For the first time, doubt crossed his face. That evening, Daniel received the first formal notice, then another, then a call from legal. He sat in his office, staring at his screen, reading the same lines over and over. Independent review, potential conflict of interest, unauthorized representation. His phone buzzed again. A message from the charity gala organizer. Press attendance confirmed. Spouse participation requested. Daniel stared at the words. Across town, Mira sat at her small desk, calm. She had showered, changed, made tea. Her phone rang. Helen's name appeared. "It's moving faster than expected," Helen said. "They're nervous." Mira closed her eyes briefly. "Good." "One more thing," Helen added. "The sealed envelope. You'll need it soon." Mira looked at her bag where the envelope still waited untouched. When she asked. Helen's voice was firm. "When he tries to deny everything." Mira hung up and sat quietly for a long time. She thought of the gala, the lights, the microphones. She didn't feel fear anymore. She felt ready. She stood, placed the envelope carefully into a folder, and set it by the door. Tomorrow she would return to his world again, calm, composed. And just before the truth would break the room open, Mira allowed herself one final thought. He won't laugh this time. The gala hall shimmered with light and glass. Cameras flashed near the entrance. Reporters stood behind velvet ropes calling out names. It was the kind of place where people came to be seen. Daniel arrived alone. That alone already raised questions. He smiled for the cameras anyway, straightened his jacket, shook hands. He told himself Mira was bluffing, that whatever she had would be tangled in law for years, that nothing could touch him tonight. Inside, guests took their seats, board members, investors, journalists. The air buzzed with quiet conversations and polished laughter. Daniel sat at the main table. His name was printed clearly on the program as a key speaker. He checked his phone again. No message from Mira. Good, he thought. She lost her nerve. Then the lights dimmed slightly. The host stepped onto the stage. Before we continue, she said there is a brief statement requested by a representative connected to tonight's honoree. Daniel frowned. A figure walked onto the stage. Mira. She wore a simple black suit. No jewelry, no dramatic makeup, just calm presence. She did not look at Daniel right away. A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Whispers spread. Cameras shifted. Daniel half rose from his chair. "What is this?" he muttered. Mira took the microphone. Her hands were steady. "My name is Mira Lawson," she said. "I am the legal wife of Daniel Lawson." The word wife landed heavily. "I'm not here to disrupt," she continued. "I'm here to clarify." Daniel stood fully now. "This is inappropriate," he said loudly. "Security." The host hesitated. Mira raised one hand gently. "I will be brief," Mira said, "and everything I say is documented." She opened the folder she had carried. Inside were copies neatly arranged. For years, she said, an inheritance claim in my name was delayed without my consent. Requests were made on my behalf that I did not authorize. She looked directly at Daniel now. "Those requests came from my husband." A sharp intake of breath echoed from somewhere in the crowd. Daniel laughed, but it sounded strained. "This is absurd. She doesn't understand legal processes." Mira nodded once. "That's what you told people, including me." She turned to the audience again. "This inheritance involves equity tied to a private company that later merged into an entity now connected to several of Mr. Lawson's investments." Murmurs grew louder. Daniel stepped toward the stage. "You're twisting things." Mira didn't raise her voice. "I'm reading them." She lifted a page. Emails. Requests for delay. Instructions to counsel. Daniel froze when he saw the date. Then Mira reached for the sealed envelope. She paused. For a brief second, the room was completely silent. "This," she said, holding it up as evidence of intent. She opened it. Inside were copies of internal communications, messages, clear language, no room for interpretation. Daniel's words were there, black and white. "Delay until merger complete. She doesn't need to know. I'll handle it." Mira read only one line aloud. "That will be enough," she said, and placed the papers on the podium. Daniel's face drained of color. Someone in the front row whispered, "My God." Daniel opened his mouth. No sound came out. He looked around, at the board members who avoided his eyes, at the journalists already typing, at the cameras that no longer favored him. "This is a private matter," he finally said, his voice cracking. "You're taking it out of context." Mira looked at him with something close to sadness. "You said I was a shadow," she said quietly. "Shadows don't sign documents. People do." Daniel tried to speak again. His lips moved. His hands trembled. Nothing came. The host stepped forward, pale. We need to pause." The room buzzed with energy now. Phones lifted. Whispers turned into urgent conversations. Daniel sank back into his chair. For the first time in his life, he had nothing to say. Mira stepped away from the podium. She did not look back. As she walked down the aisle, people parted without touching her. Behind her, Daniel sat frozen under the lights that once made him shine. The power in the room had shifted, and everyone could see it. The fallout did not come with explosions. It came quietly. Emails, calls that were not returned, meetings canceled without explanation. Daniel stayed home the next morning. He sat at the kitchen table, the same place where Mira once waited for him with dinner growing cold. Now the chair across from him was empty. His phone buzzed. Not congratulations this time. A message from the board secretary, emergency review scheduled. Your attendance is not required. Another from legal. We need to discuss representation. Daniel placed the phone face down. His hands shook slightly. He told himself this was temporary, that he could explain. That power always found its way back to those who deserved it. But something had changed. At the office, his name was no longer spoken with ease. Assistants avoided eye contact. Conversations stopped when he entered the room. A journalist called his personal number. "Mr. Lawson, can you comment on the allegations raised by your wife?" Daniel hung up. The word wife burned. Meanwhile, Mira walked through her days with steady steps. She met with Helen again, signed final confirmations, watched as documents moved from pending to resolved. The numbers were real now. The ownership was clear. Her name stood alone where it should have been all along. But the most important change was not on paper. When Mira stepped outside, she no longer felt the weight of being watched. She went to a small cafe near her rented room. The barista smiled and asked for her name. "Mira," she said, nothing else. She sat by the window and sipped her coffee slowly. Sunlight touched the table. It felt ordinary, and that felt like victory. Daniel's mother called her once. Mira, the older woman, said stiffly. "You didn't need to humiliate him." Mira listened quietly, then replied, "I didn't humiliate him. I told the truth." There was silence on the other end. "You broke this family," the woman finally said. Mira's voice was calm. "No, I stopped pretending." She ended the call. Days later, Daniel sent a message. Just one. "We need to talk." Mira read it once, then locked her phone and placed it face down on the table. She didn't feel hatred. She didn't feel triumph. She felt finished. The review concluded faster than expected. Daniel was asked to step down temporarily. His speaking engagements disappeared from calendars. Invitations dried up. People who once laughed at his jokes now said things like, "It's complicated and we're distancing ourselves." Daniel walked through the same streets he once ruled and felt invisible. For the first time, he understood the silence he had given Mira. One afternoon, Mira returned to the old house to collect the last of her things. Daniel wasn't there. She moved through the room slowly. The walls no longer felt like home. They felt like a past life. She found a photo in a drawer. The two of them years ago, younger, hopeful. She looked at it for a moment, then placed it back and closed the drawer. Some memories didn't need to be carried forward. As she locked the door for the final time, Mira paused. She felt no urge to look back. That night, she stood by the window of her new apartment. City lights flickered below. Her reflection in the glass looked calm, whole. She had not shouted. She had not begged. She had not become cruel to survive. She had simply stood where the truth could see her. And that was enough. Mira woke up early just as the city began to move. The apartment was quiet, clean. Sunlight slipped through the curtains and rested on the floor. She made tea and stood by the window watching people hurry down the street below. No one knew her story. No one needed to. She dressed simply and left the apartment with a small bag over her shoulder. At the park nearby, she sat on a bench and opened a notebook. She wrote for a while. Notes, ideas, plans that belonged only to her. Her phone buzzed once. A notification from the bank. Another from Helen confirming the final transfer. Mira read them, then put the phone away. She didn't smile. She didn't sigh with relief. She just breathed. Across town, Daniel watched the same city from a different window. His phone lay untouched on the table. The silence around him felt heavy now, the kind that didn't end quickly. Mira did not think about him much anymore. She stood up, closed her notebook, and walked forward, blending into the flow of people. Not hidden, not elevated, just present. For the first time in a long while, her life felt like it belonged to her. Humiliation does not define your worth. Silence does not mean weakness. When someone tries to erase you, the truth can bring you back into the light. Real strength is calm, not loud. Dignity grows when you stop begging for respect. And sometimes the most powerful response is simply standing with the truth. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect on it. If you've ever felt silenced or overlooked, know that your voice still matters. Like, share, and subscribe for more real-life inspired stories that speak to the heart. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done in her place?